Back with more of the Thriller in Manila here on ESPN Classic. This is Ringside, the top 10 heavyweights. This is Ringside, the top 10 heavyweights. Let's return to the Thriller in Manila. Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier.
Ali has gone out for a knockout, I think, in this round. Whether he gets it or not is something else. What about the interview in the ring? Yes, Ali! Doesn't have the firepower that he had in the middle rounds. Frazier's badly hurt. The biggest round of the fight for anybody. Frazier was within a punch or two of going down. The doctor comes up and looks at Frazier. I think it's going to be over. It's all over. Did you have any doubt about winning at any time?
Well, round 10, I was surprised Joe had so much stamina, as surprised as in shape he was. And if I didn't have the condition, I know I would have lost. There was too much pressure.
I think he deserved a lot of
He is the greatest fighter of all times next to me.
Except for you.
We return here to Gleason's Gym, the top 10 heavyweights of all time. Brian Kenny and Burt Randolph. Sugar, it's time for number one. And of course, Burt, here's the choice. Muhammad Ali, Joe Louis. Number one, you go with Joe Louis. Why?
Well, Brian, to be candid, each of us is raised with a hero. I don't want to even pretend you're as old as I am, but my generation, our hero was Joe Louis. I'm rooting for him. Your hero, Muhammad Ali.
Well, I don't say that, but you look at the objective criteria in front of you. You're looking more at the resume of the 12-year reign, 25 title defenses. You're saying that outweighs, because it's difficult for me, and I'll just say this, it's difficult to envision in a fantasy boxing matchup Joe Louis being able to find and hit Muhammad Ali. I think that's what it comes down to for me.
But that's not my criterion.
Okay.
My criterion sounds nice. My criterion is not how they would do against others. It was how they do in each case, in their own era and generation, and what effect they had. And Joe Louis, with 25 title defenses, 22 of those were knockouts. I mean, that's great. When they say great, to me, it's Joe Louis.
And that's during World War II, where he lost a lot of those, a chance to, where I fought so many exhibitions.
He was fighting exhibitions.
He could have had many more title defenses, more than that 25, which is the all-time record.
I mean, people have had more fights than he has. You look on both sides of the ledger. Ezzard Charles had more fights who succeeded him. Jimmy Braddock had more fights who preceded him. But his fights counted, every one of them. And the way he ended them, I don't think that there was anybody in the history of boxing who was a greater finisher once he had you on the hook. Ask Billy Conn how that works. Mm-hmm. Billy Conn, for 12 rounds, outpointed Joe Louis. Then he decided to slug with him. And as Billy Conn later said in the service, Joe, why didn't you just lend me your title for 12 months? Joe said, I lent it to you for 12 rounds. You didn't know what to do with it. You got close to Joe Louis, you were through. Mm-hmm. He had a deliberate approach. Yes, he wasn't fast like an Ali, but he came right forward and with either hand could destroy you. And I just give preference to heavyweights with a knockout punch. Muhammad Ali might have. Yes, against Cleveland Williams. Yes, against Sonny Liston's second fight. Exceptions.
And finished off George Foreman.
Joe Louis had won every round, every fight. To me, that's what a heavyweight champion does, and that's why he's number one in my mind's eye.
The fight against Max Schmeling, the second fight. This is another fight of the century, but if you're talking about the handful of great fights.
I just like fights of the century. Aren't we up to Buck Rogers' 2,500?
But this was. So talk about that. Obviously, more social implications in this with the fighter from Germany, the fighter from the United States, 1938. Talk about this fight.
This fight had implications over and above. It was probably the greatest sociological event held in a ring in the history of boxing. Might have been in the history of sports. Mm-hmm. It was a preview of the war to come. It was Max Schmeling representing, albeit he was never a Nazi, the Third Reich. He had gotten letters from Adolf Hitler exhorting him to go forward and win. Joe Louis had been at the White House, and Franklin Roosevelt had felt his muscles and said, Joe, we need these muscles for democracy. You had pickets outside. There were calls not to have this fight because Schmeling had already beaten Louis 2 years earlier, before Louis became champion. And the fear was Schmeling would win and take the title home to Germany. And yet, in 2 minutes and 4 seconds, Joe Louis not only destroyed Max Schmeling, he destroyed the myth of Aryan supremacy. This was the greatest fight in terms of its implications in the history of boxing.
What was different from the fight in 1936 as far as, Schmeling saying, I see something? What was different in that fight, in the second fight?
Well, I just think that pure and simply Joe Louis had improved. He had taken the fight seriously. Schmeling was scared beyond belief now because of the furor all of a sudden behind him. But most importantly, Joe Louis wanted to get it done and done quickly. And when in the dressing room, and Jimmy Cannon said, Joe, I got this going 5 rounds, Joe Louis, with his hand in gauze, just held one thumb up. He knew what he was going to do, and he did it. In fact, when he knocked out John Henry Johnson, the former light heavyweight champion, in a subsequent defense, and John Henry Johnson went backwards and fell down in 2 minutes and I think 25 seconds, Joe just said he lasted longer than Schmeling. He knew what he had to do.
He knew where he was. Amazing. All right, more greatness from Joe Louis when we come back here at Gleason's Gym. We're going to have Joe Louis versus Max Baer. We're back right after this. This is ringside.